Yeah, I wanted to go back to the change of consciousness. From what I've heard, 2012 it's not necessarily going to be a specific day where it's the end of the world or all of a sudden we're all connected to one giant being, but there are signs right now of how society as a whole and how individuals are perceiving ourselves and reacting and behaving. It's leading towards how the future will be. And there have been signs, for example, Obama being elected as president, indigo children are signs and symptoms that we may be moving towards a better future as opposed to the cataclysmic, we're going to kill each other. Do you guys, have you all been studying these or watching these signs, have any thoughts on that?
Sure. I think this is a very important aspect of the whole 2012 process. And I do think, with my background in Fingerprints of the Gods and looking at the cataclysmic events at the last ice age, when I first started studying this subject, I was of the view that there was a prediction of a return of these cataclysmic events. The more I've gone into this, the less sure I am that that's what's going down here. But nevertheless, if the ancients had wished to pick a moment in human history when mankind stands in its greatest peril, I would say that that moment is today. We do stand at an absolute crossroads with the abyss on one side and the sunlit uplands on the other. And it seems to me that it's a moment of choice for us that we're facing now. There is good and there is evil. I'm convinced of that. And the place of the human being, unique in the animal kingdom, is the opportunity to choose between one or the other. And I think we're being presented with that choice in a very unique and special way at this time, because we do live now, for the first time ever, as far as we know, in a global community where people all around the world are able to interact and exchange ideas through this wonderful, extraordinary, maddening device called the internet. We're all in touch with one another, we're sharing ideas, we're influencing one another in ways that have never been seen before, and there is a growing awareness, and I see both sides. I see the dark and the light in an intense struggle at the moment, and human choice being the key. We actually don't need cataclysmic earth changes to destroy humanity. We're quite capable of doing that ourselves, and there's a very grave danger that we will. But I also see hope from the other signs that you mentioned, and as I travel around the world, I see again and again evidence of a tremendous step change in human consciousness taking place. It's still small. It's not worldwide and dominant yet, but it's growing. And the more of us who attach to the positive side of that and don't seek to manifest the darkness. This is one of the things that worries me about the cataclysmic scenario and the way that people like to bathe in that. I don't think we should manifest that thing. I don't think we should keep on drawing it down on ourselves. I think that we should rather project a positive outcome from all of this and work in the best way we can as individuals, because that's all we can do. We're powerless on a mass scale, but each of us is powerful within our own limited sphere to make changes, to become better people, to be less toxic, to be more nurturing. And if all of us do that, we definitely will live in a better world.
Which is that we tried to do it, take a poll of the leading experts on 2012 for this film that we made, and it was really hard to find apocalyptic 2012 experts. Most of the people who really put in a lot of time into thinking about what the Mayan calendar means and the end of the long count calendar are not overly pessimistic. They're actually hopeful that it will be a rebirth, and generally when they talk about a rebirth, they're talking about human consciousness. But there was one guy, Larry Joseph, who's a journalist, who wrote a book called Apocalypse 2012, which is a sort of compendium of possible apocalyptic scenarios, everything from a magnetic pole reversal to the Yellowstone caldera exploding that Roland Emmerich took as his scenario for the film. And honestly, I think if you put a gun to Larry's head and said, "Do you believe this stuff?" he'd say, "No, not really." You know, but it sold a lot of books for him.
As a writer, I can't throw a single stone.
So I think that the overwhelming feeling from most of the people who've spent decades thinking about 2012 is hopeful, not overly pessimistic.
Absolutely, and if I may, I've heard from some astronomers, from NASA and others, and they get lots and lots of questions about 2012, and some of them are kind of disturbing. There are people who, because they're concerned that the world is going to end, will contact these astronomers and say, should I have my pets put to sleep in December to save them the pain of the world ending? And there's actually people who are writing to NASA astronomers with these kinds of questions. So if you go to the NASA website, you will see many testimonials from astronomers saying, no, the world is not going to end. No, do not put your pets to sleep. No, do not make suicide pacts. And so 2012, it can be kind of a fun story, but we have to kind of take a dose of reality at some point if it's affecting people who are already not entirely connected with reality. The whole idea of the true believer phenomenon is just a fascinating one. There have been some interesting studies done, like there was a psychology professor who brought in a magician to his students, and they did various groups of students, at one point saying this is a psychic and he's going to be reading your mind, and then to another group they would say, he's not a psychic, but tell us what you think. And then there was another group where the professor said, he is absolutely not a psychic, he's going to fool you, and we're going to show you how the tricks are done. But even in that final one, there were still students, when asked later, they said, oh yeah, I really believe he was psychic, I really believe he was reading minds, even though they showed them that it was a trick. So I think there's just something innate in human beings that we kind of want to believe that there's more. And I'm not saying that there isn't psychic, I'm not saying that there is nothing paranormal, that there are no ghosts. However, I'm saying that just as humans, I think we want to believe. I think it's fun to believe. And I think that this kind of ties into that. And then money is key. I think there are people who will write books about the aliens are coming, or they have large websites, and they get lots of attention for this. And then they kind of get married to the idea. They don't want to back down because then the attention will go away. And there's also cases of that. Was it the Fox sisters who kind of they started this whole thing about the idea of ghosts and mediums, and then when they were older, they went up and said it wasn't true, we made it up. There were sounds, but we were just like cracking our knuckles and things to make sounds. And then when they went up and admitted that it was a hoax, and then the attention kind of died away a little bit, some people still believed in them. The whole idea of mediums is continuing, but these women got very depressed because then they weren't continuing to get the attention. While they were making up the story, they got lots of attention. When they admitted it was a hoax, the attention went away. So there's a very powerful psychological effect going on of wanting to keep perpetuating the idea, the myth, the mystery of it all.
Well, that also gets back into the psychology of the apocalypse and how very attractive apocalypse and post-apocalyptic scenarios are right now. I've been talking about this a lot this weekend because in the current economic situation for an individual person, there's something very attractive about the idea of the simple reduction of life to food, water, weapons. That in an apocalyptic scenario where the world is, where there's the fabric of our society that has become so complex, frightening for a lot of people, just simply gets wiped away. As I was saying in the zombie panels, if the zombies are chewing down your door, you're not worried about your credit card bill. And that there is a great deal of attractiveness to that kind of a scenario. And so I think a lot of people have latched on to 2012 because now we have a date after which we don't have to worry about this anymore.
No more taxes.
And you don't have no more taxes. You don't have to pay off your student loans. Congratulations, because the world's going to end, or at least the world as we know it will end, and we'll all be living a much simpler life eating carrots. That relates to a different panel. Sorry, there will always be taxes, but I really do think that that's something that is extremely attractive to people and might explain why we have so much hysteria about 2012 and why the NASA researchers are getting all of those letters, which is disturbing.
There's very elaborate. I recommend everyone here go on Google, go to the NASA site. They've got videos of astronomers saying it's not happening, calm down, because they're just concerned about the kind of the hysteria that's building among some people.
I completely agree with almost everything you were saying, but
Almost.
But I don't know how any astronomer aware of the number of near-Earth asteroids that are presently circling our planet and crossing the orbit of the Earth, so-called Apollo objects, aware of the danger of long-period comets coming back in that we might not even know about. I don't know how any responsible astronomer could put his hand on his heart and say absolutely for sure nothing bad is going to happen to the Earth on the 21st of December 2012, because most responsible astronomers I know who are aware of the asteroid problem are pretty bloody worried about it, actually.
I disagree. As a matter of fact, I was just looking at the NASA site where they were saying that no, there are no such large objects. If there were, this idea that there's a planet X that's going to be intersecting.
It's not a
the
planet
Earth,
X. It's called
or-
Apollo objects. It's asteroids of 10 kilometers or more in diameter.
Well, there's
You're
always
dealing
meteors.
actually. Meteors are tiny little things.
Meteors are actually flashes of light.
Ast-
They're not actually the things. It's the
Meteor-
meteoroid
no.
that causes the meteor,
Well, as you
and then
wish.
it's on the ground and it's a meteorite.
Let's stop splitting hairs. Let's stop splitting hairs. The issue of the Apollo objects of thousands of already identified asteroids that cross the Earth's orbit, which all are potential impactors with the Earth, is a serious issue. It is taken seriously by astronomers. It's got nothing to do with Planet X, and it wouldn't be smart for anybody to say that, oh, we're going to be fine for the next 10,000 years.
Well, they also might be trying to calm down the hysteria if they're getting that level of letters. It may be easier to say, really, it's not going to happen. So at
Exactly.
least, the very least, I mean, I fully expect that given the hysteria in 2012, we will see some of the suicide pacts, the cults, like we did with the comet, the name of which escapes me, but sometime in the late 90s. Those guys. And that is something that I imagine they are going to try their best to stop, and I don't think they will succeed
Right,
entirely.
a couple of things I want to add. One is somebody mentioned Google. The number one keyword advertiser for 2012 at the time we made the film was actually a religious group that would very much like there to be an end time on that date. That's an issue that we haven't discussed today, but there is a wish for there to be an end time amongst certain religious groups. That's all. I just wanted to touch on that because it is part of the 2012 discussion. And NASA does have an official 2012 page, as you referred to, so, which they put up about a year ago. In the hype, leading up to the hype of the Emmerich movie. I don't know whether Roland put his friends at NASA up to it, but that was the timing for that. And then yes, absolutely, the near-Earth objects and potential collision with Earth is a big issue. There's one called Apophis that may or may not come in 2036 or 2068 in the most popular years. So yeah, there are some real apocalyptic scenarios, but they're not really tied to 2012 in particular.
I want to jump in for just 1 second and say this. I think there's a little bit of the boy who cried wolf scenario here, in that, you know, the alarm has been raised so many times that, you know, eventually people don't believe that the wolf is coming eating the sheep anymore. But of course, there's two morals to the story. You know, if you constantly raise the alarm and hysteria over nothing, pretty soon people aren't going to believe you anymore. But of course, at the end of the story, the wolf really did show up and eat the sheep. And since I can recall, going back to about 1968 or 1969, there have been at least 12 or 15 predictions about the end of the world. And I want to make it clear that by invoking the idea of catastrophism, I'm not in any way implying that I think that 2012 represents, you know, an impending catastrophe, because I don't. But on the other hand, global catastrophes are very real. And what Graham was talking about, the near-Earth asteroid threat, is very real. And you should do your homework, and you'll discover that,
I agree.
yeah, and this is a long-term thing. It's not something we're going to be worrying about in the next 2 years. But then again, we don't know. I mean, probably most people in this room are aware of the 1908 event, the June 30th, 1908 event in Siberia. Well, that was like a little cosmic wake-up call, in my opinion, because Graham could actually elaborate on this quite a bit. The research that's been done by the coherent catastrophists in Britain on the Taurid meteor shower and its significance to our own Earth history, and it's a very interesting something that people should know about. But again, this is not a doomsday. I don't look at this as a doomsday scenario any more than this. If you live on the coast of South Carolina, it's a good idea to be knowledgeable about hurricanes and their effects. If you live in the Midwest in a tornado belt, it's a good idea to be knowledgeable about the effects of tornadoes. If you live up in the Pacific Northwest, it's a good thing to know about the effects of earthquakes and what they might do on your home if you don't have earthquake measures. Well, if you live on planet Earth, it's a good idea to have a sense of what's in the larger environment that
I'm sorry, I have to wrap this up because I have
have two panelists that actually have to leave to go to another panel.
Mad dash.
So if you want to ask a question of one of the remaining panelists, you
Thank you,
can.